I went nap now. Anyone
Irish?
yes? Irish? No. I didn't do that. No. You said Ukrainian?
Yes.
It had a lot of Yugoslavian in it, so close. It's actually a French last name. So yes, yes, that's the face I normally get. You can call me Craig, it's probably what you can choose, but. One of the questions I want to ask first is how many people here by raising their hand has an LLC / S corp? Okay, who doesn't? Not to pick on the fewer group, but why? Why don't we have an LLC? And there might be a legitimate reason. I'm just curious. Can anyone be brave enough not to ask?
I just started.
Good. That's a good answer. Good, just started. What else? Other reasons?
The advantage.
Advantage? Yeah, good. Hopefully I can answer that. If I don't answer that, then I won't come back ever again. So, can anyone tell me the difference between an LLC and an S corp? You can't all hire you.
How you file your
It's something with how it's filed.
You file every quarter or every year.
Okay, good. That's close. That's good. That's close.
An S corp has to have a board of directors and an annual meeting.
Yes, correct. LLCs should as well. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Any other suggestions, answers?
We just give them to you and you take care
That's
of it.
good.
Yeah.
That's good. Be a great client. No.
I am your client.
That'll happen. For that reason, so LLC, can you have an LLC and an S corp? Can they be the same thing? A PLLC, yeah, but you have a professional corporation, it's great. Then that professional designation with the state level, the PLLC or the PC is just a state level designation for a professional business. So you can be a PLLC, a PC, and have an S corp designation. Anyone guess how much savings can come from an S corp percentage wise? Does anyone know what self-employment tax is? Ever heard of self-employment tax?
Yes.
I call it a startup killer. So for most realtors that are just getting started, it kills the industry. Makes it really, really hard to get ahead.
Yeah.
So I can finally make money. No, go ahead, go ahead.
What?
Exactly. Yeah. And they go, this is the worst business ever. And you the field. Which is sad. So I've been in real estate for many, many years. I do some of the largest real estate syndications in the country, do most of the brokerages, especially East Coast, and very heavy in East Coast in California and Texas. And it's sad because a lot of people get out of the industry because of taxes. And I don't like that because while taxes do suck, they do have a purpose, and there's a purpose for us here to try to avoid as much as possible. So as far as percentage wise, self-employment tax is 15.3%. Anyone know off the top of the head what payroll tax is? So this is what's called self-employment tax. And then there's FICA tax, your payroll tax. Ooh, that's good. Yeah. So why'd you say 7%? Yeah. Actually, it's about 7.5 is about accurate for FICA tax on the employee side. When you're the employer, so if you're an S corp, there's a requirement for an S corp, you have to run a W-2 for yourself. You have to give yourself a wage. In that situation, you are the owner and the employee. So the actual percentage actually is the exact same. Funny that. Irish likes to keep things simple. Right. Again, we have a long conversation on the Irish. We'll get to that. So again, the savings here, well, let's just do a very, very basic example. Let's say you make 100K and you're a single member LLC, single member, or what's called a sole prop. So sole prop is for the individuals who did not raise their hand when they're an LLC, they file on a tax return called Schedule C. You make 100 grand, and let's just say you're amazing, your brokerage, you didn't charge any fees, you didn't have any fees at all, and you just made 100 grand flat, right? No expenses. That'd be a nice business to be in. You pay 15,300 in self-employment tax, right? Then you pay another, let's say you're in the 20% bracket. You're gonna, oh, sorry, so here, you're gonna pay ordinary taxes of another 20 grand. So in this basic, extremely rudimentary example, you will pay 35K, 35,000 in taxes. If you're an S corp, same example, 100K, self-employment tax is 0. You still have your 20K of your ordinary taxes. You only pay 20K. Did I move too quick, or that makes sense, at least as far as numbers? Does that make sense why a lot of times it can be advantageous to be an S corp?
What's the 20K?
Just ordinary taxes, sure, ordinary tax rate. I'm just saying you're at a 20% bracket with the right number. So any questions so far?
Yeah, we might had 20K up so.
It's pretty funny, right? So these are what a business model the IRS. They're the only really industry out there that you can't deduct their fee, right? Everything else we deducted, property fee, listing fee, property taxes, everything else. The income taxes unfortunately cannot be. That'd be pretty nice. That would be nice, right? So then this is again, super simple example, say 15K. Now we know that's not exactly correct, but we still have to give ourselves a salary. So there's gonna be some taxes lost and savings of this W-2. But again, this is just a rudimentary example, can show why an S corp can be important. Another big one for me is audits. And if you're embarrassed, don't raise your hand, but has anyone been audited before? Has anyone enjoyed being audited? No. Okay, well, big shock, right? Can anyone tell me, and I ask a lot of questions, and please, if you need to interrupt me at all for your own questions, feel free to. Can anyone tell me the audit rates between those two returns over there? So again, the first one's like a single member LLC. If you're not an LLC, S corp or a partnership or a corporation, you're gonna file like you file TurboTax or somebody, you're gonna be filing what's called a Schedule C, file on one return. That's that first option. Second option is an S corp. Anyone tell me the audit differences between the two?
About 30%. The first one gets audited more.
Yeah, significantly. You have 900 times more likelihood of getting audited on the first one than the S corp. 900 times. So, yeah, 900 times more likely. So just for example, I don't file that first return. So if you guys ever came to me and said, hey, Asian guy named Craig, this is awesome. I really like all your work. I really want to stay this LLC. I won't do your tax. There's a lot of preparers out there that will. I'm not one of them. And the majority of the reason is because of that 900 times more likely to do. Even if you guys are the most straight arrow, you guys don't put anything aggressive on your taxes, audits suck because they take a lot of time. So 900 times, if you're sitting there and you're looking at your own taxes in your brain, you're going, can I file that first way? Have a talk with your preparer. Ask if it's more advantageous to switch to an S corp, do the math yourself, talk to me, talk to somebody, because that right there, I think even more than the tax savings alone, not getting audited, I think would be, in my opinion, is a little higher of a reason. Questions so far on that? So one of the reasons, again, my title of my talk or about my discussion here is tax planning structure. So the reason that S corp gets audited so much less likely is an S corp is what's called a pass-through entity. All that mumbo jumbo means is you file a separate tax return for it. And that significantly reduces your audit chance because audits on the first option, the single member LLC, can be audited by a guy out of IRS school out of 6 weeks. 6 weeks in a training course, they can audit you. The S corp, they can't. You get put into a bucket where the audits are about 0.2% of the time you get audited, but of that 0.2%, if you make $1 million or higher, they make about 80% of those audits. So if you're under $1 million, you're of like 100% chance of getting audited. So for me, part of creating this wealth and actually creating a good structure starts with an S corp. Questions so far on that?
What about having two members of your LLC?
Yeah, just like, is that a good option? Is that the question? Or
Yeah, like instead of an S corp.
yeah. So an LLC can file 4 different ways. I'll talk about most of them today, right? You can file as a single member LLC, a partnership, which is what you're referring to, 2-member, S corp, or a C corp. C corp, we don't talk too much about in here. There's a double taxation. It can be useful if we, like a lot of brokerages I have, can have what's called a block report, and those can be advantageous. But you can have a double member S corp or a partnership. You can't have a double member, single member, right? So if you have 2 people, you're either going to file as a partnership or as an S corp. Does anyone here a partnership? Do you have a partnership? Yeah. With a spouse, is that fair enough to ask? Nope. With it friends like that, we'll just say,
No,
good.
just no spouse over here.
I'm gonna pick on this guy.
I'm gonna try it. Everyone's gonna come through.
We got 1% so that I can save.
Oh, yeah, okay, good. So back in the 80s, especially in Utah, that was actually super common. The 80s tax law was kind of in favor of the IRS, and a lot of the payers in Utah used to do just that. They would create a partnership, they would throw on a neighbor. There's a lot of actually stories in Utah of people trying to put animals, dogs, getting them social. Yeah. I don't recommend that. That's not an endorsement at all. But yeah, so you can do that. It's actually pretty common also to switch the ownership so that you have 1% and that your dog or whoever have 99%. You make them passive. So there was a tax strategy that I got kind of battled in court a lot, so. Yeah, you could be a partnership. The partnership, the problem is. It helps with the audit percentages. Your audit chances are a lot lower, very similar to an S corp, but you still have to pay that self-employment tax. So if you're a partnership, I would recommend a structure a little more like a holding company. Anyone here have a holding company or know what a holding company is? A few of you guys? Any of you guys want to explain why you guys use a holding company? I know this is really personal stuff, so if you guys say, yeah, no way, please tell me because I won't ask again, but does anyone want to give an example of why they use a holding company? Let me give you a very basic example. Who here owns real estate? Their own personal home, on rentals, anything like that. Good. Great job. That we'll go into that in the next year. So you guys own rental properties. I'm assuming most of you guys have them on your individual return. Is that a fair assumption? A lot of you guys. So a holding company, we'll call it a holding LLC. We'll use Wyoming as an example. Let's say this is 50-50 with, let's say Craig. And I don't have a dog, but if I did, it would be named Toby. So my dog Toby's my other partner, right? Here's my holding company. Over here is my S corp. I'm a realtor, I'm killing it with KW, I'm just making tons of money. I got my S corp sitting over here. In theory, if you guys have rental properties and you guys have an S corp, or if you don't have an S corp yet and you want one, I recommend talking with your parents, somehow getting some type of holding company. There's a lot of discussion, and this is kind of a missed area, especially in Utah tax of asset protection. In this theory, me and my dog Toby, this holding company is going to own disregarded LLCs. Anyone know what a disregarded LLC is? Anyone know that term?
I think it's an LLC that you can hold a property in, but it really just filters for tax purposes, it filters back into like a parent.
I'll send you an application from the company.
Yeah,
I know you didn't want
I'm fired after the same meeting today, so
to.
thank you.
I got you. So, yeah, disregard is exactly right. A lot of times we'll hold assets, this is an asset protection move. A lot of the times the disregarded term means it doesn't file its own tax return. Right, so what you could do, you could go create every property you own, you and your spouse, or get me and Toby could go buy every one of these properties, and we could own them all. And we own the property, right, little house here, and then me and my dog here, right? We
Question,
could do that, yeah, go ahead.
can you have one holding LLC for properties in different states?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So they
100%.
don't have to be in a holding LLC in that particular state?
Yeah, great question. So in this example, right, we're gonna say Wyoming is where I created my holding company. Inside disregarded entities, we'll call this one our Utah one. And we'll call this one Nevada. And great, rental property right now is Tennessee. You would have each one of these actually owning the property inside those states. Your holding company doesn't own any of the actual real estate. So for your, to answer your question, yeah, you don't need to have each one of like these inside Wyoming and vice versa. Just the property, it has to be inside, it has to be from that state. So again, Utah, we create our Utah property, or a nice little rental property inside here. That income and expenses will flow to our holding company. And now Craig and Toby, it's a terrible example, but we roll with it. Craig and Toby are gonna file one tax return, income tax. If you do the route where me and Toby own every single property, you're gonna have, exactly, your parents are gonna love you because you're gonna pay a ton of fees, but this is meant to be more asset protection and reduce on our fees. Questions so far on this? This is relatively straightforward to set up. You don't need to pay someone $10,000 for this. You can do this yourself. You can pay someone to do it, great, but this is not overly complicated to do.
So this is the way you set it up for any partnership, right? With your spouse.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, so we'll move a little more towards asset protection. Yes, I would absolutely. If fees weren't involved, and because I do my own taxes, yeah, I have like 100 bajillion of these subjects, right?
Right.
I would. Now, not all of you guys can do this on your own, so it does cost fees. So to answer your question, you know, there might be a situation where you might not want fees because the fees may not be worth it. But yeah, I think everyone here, if you're a spouse, we're not yet a spouse, we'll find one sooner or later, right? And we'll get that spouse, and there should be a family partnership involved. And that should be a holding company that all of our rental properties are underneath that one. And then you have a partner, same thing. That needs to be separate from this holding company for liability purposes. So let's say you and me are having this talk, like, Craig, you're amazing, I want to go buy a property with you. I would go create another holding company over here that you and I would own separate. Right. And then what I'm going to do is, because I care more about asset protection than a lot of people, my holding company here, instead of owning it by Craig, I'm not going to own it by Craig anymore. I'm going to be holding it by one of my holding companies. So I'm gonna have holding LLC number 2. And that would be my ownership. And then what was your name, by the way? Travis, you'd own your percentage over here by your name, or again, if you had an LLC, we'd put it on that side.
So how many holding companies do you, because I get there's a million different LLCs and S corps that are set up, right?
Yeah.
How many different holding companies do you?
Yeah, I won't answer personally. Most of my clients, probably under 3. Because theoretically, right, in this situation here, you can flow it all back to this one company. So you need to hear, if you're married, have a significant other, you need to have that holding company, absolutely. You can normally get by with that one. If I've got a partner, no offense, Travis, we're gonna use it as an example, because I know your name. Let's say I feel like you're a little shady, right? I'm like, yeah, he just looks a little too good to be true. It's accurate, okay, well, good. Like, if I kind of work it, you guys know each other more than his name. Right, so if you look shady back there, I'm like, I might make myself a little bit more, in which case, that's why I put another holding company, just to give myself another layer.
T shade.
Too shady.
So in talking about the asset protection part, did you intentionally use the example of Wyoming LLC versus Utah?
Absolutely. Anyone answer why we use Wyoming? There's 2 big reasons why we use Wyoming.
Don't have.
They're cowboys.
Yeah, did you hear what he just said? They're cowboys? I know we wear cowboy boots. I decided not to wear cowboy boots or else I would have fit absolutely perfect. But yeah, what's your name in the back?
Sean,
Sean did it exactly right. Wyoming is one of the few states that believes in anonymity. So when you go create Utah LLC, you have to declare who the owners are. Right, every time. They want to know because it's Utah, and it's like, most states want to know. Wyoming doesn't. You can actually hire companies, you can hire myself, you can hire anyone who has residence there to actually put their name on your file documents. And don't do this, but if you could Google Sheen Shang up in Wyoming, they won't pull anything up luckily, but let's say you type in Sheen Shang LLC up in Wyoming. Now that'd be a terrible name to use because there's not many, I mean, my family's only Sheen Shang on the Western United States, so you can probably find me pretty easily, but if you type in Sheen Shang LLC in Wyoming, it was my company, you would see a random John Doe name on all of the file documents. You wouldn't know I own it. So that is number 1 reason, right? So when someone goes, oh, I know Craig's got big money, he's got a property in Utah, and it just looks prime for a lawsuit, I'm gonna go fall on it. Then, which is more common than you think. The reason they're gonna fall on your property is because they can find your property. They can find what the equity is, they can find your mortgage, they can find all the information tied to that property. They can't do that in Wyoming. They can't find who owns the property. So now they're just throwing darts at the wall, hoping that structure was a little bit more penetrable.
so can the Wyoming LLC be the principal for Utah LLC?
Yes, you can. You have to have a Utah base, right? Every LLC inside the state has to have a registered agent in the state. So you still have to pay someone to have their name on the business. And then again, that registered agent legally by law has to keep who the actual owners on their records. Not required to divulge it to anybody, but they have to have it on record. So they will have that Sean owns this LLC, but it's never public. But you
You guys
can't
have a registration agent service.
do, this is who? Yes, yeah, I do. Yeah, you can hire anyone. I mean, they're most of them are like, I charge like $50 a year. It's not expensive at all. It really is.
So would it be wise in a way to make your main head holding company be the one out of Wyoming and then your subs, if you have them underneath those?
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. So this disregard entity right here is not owned by Credit. It's owned by Wyoming LLC. And same thing with every other one.
I was recently told to do your holding one in Montana.
Montana, there was a cancel article about it the other day, anyone read, or about a year ago about the vehicles. I'm not a TikTok guy, but I have so many clients that send me TikTok videos, so make sure it's very clear, I'm not a TikToker, but there's a big TikTok group going around right now talking about Montana and registering your LLC in Montana. Although this is extremely important to note here. Does this, by me registering in Wyoming, does this change my tax burden at all? No, I don't live in Wyoming. So if anyone ever tells you, oh, I put my LLC in Nevada or Florida or Wyoming because it saves you so much tax because they have no income tax, that's garbage. You pay tax where you live, right? So I file a Wyoming holding LLC, it flows down to my Utah, and I pay Utah tax on all my Wyoming LLCs. So just like Montana, the only time I use Montana as an asset protection is for no sales tax. There's people, if does anyone know that article I was talking about? No one watches those TikTok videos, you see it. If you're buying a vehicle and especially you're paying cash for it, there is a loophole that you can go actually hire a registered agent, hire myself, hire someone else with Dominion in Montana, register your business there and your business buys the vehicle. You then save the 7.25% sales tax on the vehicle.
Well, and then you don't ever have to register them again.
Yeah, correct, exactly correct. You don't want the renewal DMV, well, they have a renewal, but it's like, I think it's like $25. It's really cheap. Or Utah, for average is like 250 to 300 a year. So great savings, if you're looking to buy a vehicle, go that route. Two disclaimers here, and this is a little more off tangent than, well, but a little. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, we have some clients that did that very thing. They bought this horse trailer that was like a $63,000 horse trailer. They put an LLC in Montana, they have to pay the sales tax, it's licensed in Montana. And
Perfect. That's why when you go around, you sell Montana license plates. "Man, why is there so many they live here? They're not from Montana. Have you ever been to Montana? I do not endorse living in Montana. Yeah, so obviously that's the disclaimers there, right, is one, you have to make sure your insurance company's okay with it. Some insurance companies will give a claim. They will throw a little bit of a wrench, since it's not domiciled in Montana. So if you ever call and get an accident, you have to explain, hey, I was just traveling down Utah, I love my home in Montana. That kind of play that game a little bit, so make sure that there's a disclaimer there. Second disclaimer is Utah knows about it. Utah's trying to create a loophole to avoid it. They never will. Right? They're a little bit like a dog, they got no bark. But there is a theory that they got pulled over, they could ask you why. Again, as long as you're just, or with the, hey, actually, this is a business and my business is based in Montana, just make sure those disclaimers are out there. If you're trying. That's a fascinating topic. Does anyone have any questions about the Montana LLC side there? So last topic on the LLC side on this portion here, you'll hear about Wyoming, Nevada, and Delaware. You've heard Delaware a lot. Delaware is great if you're doing any type of like startup. You're doing any type of like seed funding, angel investing. That's great for Delaware. By far though, if you're trying to create like a holding company, Wyoming can't be beat. Wyoming's for the cheapest, $100, well, $102 to set up. Very, very cheap. They have an annual renewal fee of like $60. Nevada is like $350. Florida's 200. So that's by far in Wyoming. So the first reason, right, we talked about was anonymity. Second, real quick, is Wyoming does have a favorable court case file for pro business. A little bit outside my realm, I won't talk too much about the legal side here, but in theory, if you get sued and you have a Wyoming LLC, the court cases will defend you a little bit more than Utah system would. That's where we start talking about the nitty gritty. Wyoming has that kind of data. Questions there at all on the LLC side, John?
Excuse me, is it better to have for privacy and protection, your personal home in an LLC or a trust?
Anyone know the answer to that?
$1 million.
Trust. $1 million. Yeah, good question. There's like the Homestead Act we talk a lot about. It depends. Great answer, right? Should we just move on to that?
Super helpful.
I got it. In my personal opinion, is an LLC every day of the week. I'm not a very big pro trust. So I'm teaching in Texas next week, and I got one of my colleagues that talks about land trusts. And again, it's not my favorite, but the concept is each one of these properties here, right, this disregarded entity in Utah, if I own them outright, I'll create a land trust that actually owns the land. And then the trust is owned by the disregarded entity and then owned in there. So asset protection is kind of like the gold, silver, bronze plan. Everyone, their dog thinks they need this gold plan, this Wyoming LLC, but they don't want to pay for the gold plan. So keep in mind that as your liability changes, as your growth changes, your structure needs to change too. But Sean, to answer your question, no, I don't think trusts aren't as favorable as lawyers want to make them out to be. I'm not a big, you need to have a trust involved, absolutely. You need an irrevocable trust, especially to get out of probate. But we're talking about asset protection. This adds, I will argue, some value, but not for the fees that are involved. I think only if there's a disregarded LLC is just fun protection. Other questions on the asset protection side? Any other random questions you guys have heard about taxes or asset protection or structure that anyone wants to ask me? No question, right, Ron? I've answered everyone. Good. All right, tax planning. We're going to move on to tax planning. Any other questions about structure before we move on? Okay. So tax planning, who here loves tax planning with a preparer and who has a really good preparer that does tax planning? Sean, good? Okay. I was like, oh, really? So why is your tax planning so good?
Knowing the value that it gives me.
Yeah.
The amount of taxes that I save, the anonymity, which is super important to me, and knowing that if someone comes after me, I'm not low hanging fruit. My personal vehicle's protected, my home's protected, my LLC's protected.
That lots of value, right? If you guys aren't having tax planning, and the tax planning, you guys can be fine with TurboTax, and that's fine. I give a bad rap to people using TurboTax just because it's, well, TurboTax. But that's fine. You just need to be proactive on your own to do tax planning. This is the problem that I've seen a lot with a lot of brokers I teach at is, you guys all know, right? It's feast or famine. Right? It can be a month, nothing, next month, make 100 grand, the next month, nothing. It's just back and forth so much that tax planning can seem kind of like a drag. Because you finally, you've been building up your credit card debt, you've been waiting for that big payout, and it finally comes, and you pay everything off, and then there's nothing really left to plan around. You know, all the money's kind of been spent or allocated other places. And so my kind of plug here is, well, again, whoever you're working with, just actively do tax planning. It doesn't need to be much. Just say you're prepared. Okay, if it's if it's TurboTax, talk with your spouse, talk with yourself, get all your financials out, but talk to yourself. Yeah, bring out your talk. I did actually have a dog named Toby. He was an ugly, one of those pugs.
Oh.
And the Chinese pug, which didn't help the whole Xing Shang thing out. Wasn't the best dog, but you can talk to your dog, talk to whoever. You just have to be proactive about it. So sending the financials, sending what you've earned, sending what your expectations to earn are, especially now. I do most of my tax planning with my clients September, October. That still gives us enough time to be able to make any changes by the end of the year. If you reach out to your preparer December 24th, 25th, they're probably not gonna like you very much, and they probably won't respond to the next year anyways. So we gotta be proactive and make sure we're talking to people who have planning. So what are some deductions you guys have heard, whether you take yourself or you've heard again, through TikTok, friends, family, taxes? What are some deductions you guys have heard that you can or cannot take or have questions about?
Your meals, your clothes, your
What was that?
meals,
Your meals? What are your
clothes.
meals? Anyone know the ability or what allows you to take a meal versus not being able to take a meal?
Where and with who?
Where people good, yeah.
So you've
yeah.
got, if it's local, or if it's like 50%, or if it's away when you're on a business trip, then it's different.
So what if I take, what if you and I go, we go on a trip, we go down south and go to St. George. And we go and just have a fun time golfing, 'cause I'm terrible at it, I love golf, and we just golf all day, and I pay for a meal with you. Is that a deduction?
Did you talk about business?
We talk about, yeah, I'm sure we talk about business, golf company, and we talk about my golf equipment, how great it is, and how she should buy some of my equipment. Is that a deduction? Yeah, good.
I feel like there's.
I feel like there's. No, everyone's ready to answer.
Yeah, everyone is. And that's kind of what the point of the tax planning is. So there are two words determined, and please somebody's better spelling. Did I spell that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone ever heard this from their preparer or someone else? Necessary and ordinary? Did anyone ever Google IRS tax deduction? Does it pull up the IRS? Does it have a list of like, maybe McDonald's is okay, but not cafeteria? Does anyone ever Google that? No. There is no list of the IRS that says these are qualified expenses. And why? Yeah, every single would be too easy, is that what you said? It'd be too easy. Yeah, it would be too easy. I need a job, so let's not push too far down that road, but these are the only two words the IRS dictates in order to take an expense. So let's take a boat. Who owns a boat here? I cannot believe how expensive boats cost. My buddy bought one of those Larry's boats. They're gonna live in them, like 400 grand. Yeah, I didn't know boats could cost that much. Anyways, so can a boat be a deduction? Right, depends. So it depends on if it hits these two categories. So ordinary, all that means is take a realtor example. Let's say eating out down in St. George with your accountant. Let's say, is that necessary? How are you? That's perfect. So ordinary means that other people in the same type of business as you would have it on their taxes. So taking the meal example down in St. George, if you ever go out to eat with me, we're deducting that meal, period. We're not, we probably won't go out to eat because it needs to be a deduction. You're talking with me, it's a deduction. This is not an invitation, by the way, to eat with me, but ordinary means that it's an expense that everyone else is likely going to have on their same taxes. Does that make sense so far? Okay, this is the key one right here, necessary. Anyone have an idea of what that means to the IRS?
Was it necessary to promote your business?
Yeah,
during that?
almost perfect, right? So to promote, we're gonna change the word to make money. So it was necessary to derive income. If we can prove that, if we can prove that going out and eating with your account was necessary, meaning it made us money, it's now an expense. So this is critical, in my opinion, for anything they're trying to decide if something can be an expense or not. Did this tie to more money? So like, let's say I've got there's a pool party from some of my clients down south that are doing this week or next week. Is it ordinary for realtors to have like appreciation parties for all the time? Pretty normal, right? So we hit the ordinary. Necessary. In order for them to have that deduction of that pool party that their family and friends might be able to go to, they're gonna enjoy themselves. They need to be able to prove that that made them money. How would they do that? How could they show to the IRS, auditor comes, they see this pool party expense of 20 grand. How could they show that that made them money?
Right out of the house.
Yeah, great, perfect. So is it important for us to keep track of all of our clients, where we found them from, why we found them, what expenses were associated with that referral? Absolutely.
Yeah, that just brings up the question, what if you pay the $20,000 for this pool party and then 100 people show up, nobody does business?
Yeah, great question. Does anyone know a failed business? Everyone heard of a failed business? I'm trying to you, right? So not something that you actually got into, but that you tried, right? So is it a requirement? No, but this was necessary that I needed to derive income.
So
So
like putting my brand name on my boat.
that's a good one. I love that one. People say all the time, right? If I put my business name on the side of my car, now it's deducted, right? Yeah, maybe, absolutely, right? Because you have to be able to show that because you were driving around, you got a referral, someone saw your vehicle, they checked and said, my goodness, that vehicle looks so awesome. Because of that vehicle, I'm now buying a house from you. Yeah, absolutely, that whole thing's
Make
right.
sure you're a good driver, just saying.
Yeah, I mean, but it's always bad in politics.
I've got a YouTube family that lives in our neighborhood.
Yeah, me too, yeah.
And so they say that they write off everything because they film everything they do. And so could you like
So
create
we
an
can now
LLC based on your Instagram? Yeah, and just be like, everything I do, I post on here, so it's all right.
Well, what's the answer? What's the general consensus?
And
Yeah, now we're learning. Yeah, now we're learning. Absolutely, I do a lot of influencers on social media. This is probably more information I care to share. I do a lot of OnlyFans, apparently. I didn't know what that was. I'm like Googling this, I'm like, oh, that's a little different than what I was expecting.
Really good for work, honey.
Yeah, don't worry about it. My wife loves me very much. I'll make sure that's very clear. So anyway, OnlyFans, social media, Instagram, right? All those influencers, great question, right? Can they, by me posting on my trip to Mexico, can I now deduct my trip to Mexico? And the answer is, yeah, absolutely. It hits these two categories. So a good example, let's take what was your name, by the way?
Chris.
Chris. Let's take Chris's example of, I'm a Instagrammer and I go to Japan on a trip. So I deduct all my flights, my meals, hotel, everything over there I deduct, right? IRS comes and audits. They're gonna say, is that ordinary? And if I'm defending them, yeah, absolutely. I've got so many Instagrammers that will deduct every trip they go on because they're taking the photos, they're getting likes, or that likes get affiliate listings and how they make more money. So that's absolutely ordinary. The necessary means that it was to make money. And I'm not gonna wood, I've never had a client get audited, but I represent a lot of clients for audits. And what the auditor will say every time, what they'll say was that business profitable? Did that business make money? So if I have a neighbor, Chris, that as the influencer, that take all these trips and they have a $50,000 loss in their taxes and they've got 12 followers and they made 30 cents. No, they're gonna lose those deductions. Now, if I've got a family that makes 200K and they get all this great income and they have 220,000 worth of write-offs, yeah, there's a very good chance they don't get audited. So when it comes to deductions, it comes to your income level, where you are to what is an actual expense. Like, I had a client years ago that they went to Tiffany and bought this like $30,000 ring for their wife. I've had clients that deduct Tiffany jewelry before. That client made like 60 grand a year. Not to my advice, they buy the ring, but they went out and bought a 30, like half their salary bought a ring. They want to take deduction for it. In my opinion, in that income level, they did not justify that expense, even though they had a great excuse because they posted something about it and they got some money back from Tiffany. It wasn't a legitimate business. Does that make sense? Who's here? I heard the 3-year rule. That's a pretty common one that's been, everyone's talking about like your business has to be profitable in 3 years. Everyone heard that before? Oh, good, it's dying off. That used to be super popular.
I've heard that you can only lose money for 3 years,
Yeah.
then it has to be profitable.
Exactly right. So that's been around since the 80s. And it's slowly, because a decade ago, everyone used to raise their hand. And now nobody raises their hand, which is good, that's kind of dying off. You can have a business lose money every single year. Apple loses money almost every year. Most major corporations lose money every year because of the write-offs. So is that a fallacy? Yeah, I think it's an absolute fallacy. The reason being is, we're going a little more into audits than intended, but does anyone here know how the actual audits on a personal level work? Like in detail, anyone ever, is it just luck of the draw? Is it based on your last name? Like, does anyone know how the IRS actually chooses who they audit?
I would say it's
Luck
like
of
an
the draw.
error,
What'd you say?
like an error or a abnormal thing on
Yeah,
your tax.
abnormal, yeah, abnormal, I think is the right answer there.
Years back.
Timing, yeah, absolutely, when you file, there's a million books of people like that can show the algorithms, how the IRS chooses and timing, certain time of the day, certain day of the week changes your algorithm. There's a lot of kind of theories, but the base of it is it's all based on points. And this is for individual taxes, not for businesses, but because individuals can go through a computer. Everything on your return has a calculable point. When your points get above a predetermined threshold, you then can put it into a bucket that then will get randomly selected. With me so far on that? So the goal of any good preparer is to make sure your points are always below that threshold. Because now you're literally just luck of the draw that you just got randomly selected.
So how's that affected by being an S corp, being an LLC?
Great question. So a big one of points is a Schedule C. Schedule C is what I talked about earlier with the single member LLC, right? That's how you file, it's called Schedule C. This has a massive point total. Massive. You have this on your return, you're almost already up above the threshold, especially if the Schedule C is a loss. Let's say you got your Schedule C here, being a realtor, you make 100 grand, you got like 20 grand of write-offs. So it's profitable, it's a good looking business. Then you have another Schedule C because you like carving wood ducks and it's got $20 of income because your neighbor got it. And then you brought off all of your trips to Japan to look at birds. And there's a $60,000 lot there. Yeah, you're almost already above that point. So how does it affect when you're an S corp? S corps, well, when you get audited with on your individual return, all they get is a K1. So for a computer program, all they see on your business on the personal level is this K1. Only thing this K1 says is your net income. Doesn't tell you how much you made, doesn't tell you how many write-offs you had, doesn't show you your travel expenses, your mileage. All it shows is one just fat number. It could be positive, it could be negative. That's all the IRS sees when they audit, so their algorithm weights that extremely low. Hence why that audit chance is 900 times more likely. That's why. Following that so far? Questions so far about the points or audits on the personal side? What are some other expenses that people have been told they can't take?
Well, one thing that was a change, I don't know what it is now, with full cell phones, they actually had a landline. And then you could write off 100% of your cell phone.
Yeah, someone's a good one. Used to be like that, right? You used to have that landline. Then there was back, you remember dial-up internet when those great days and you have a certain amount of minutes. So you called like a Verizon customer, didn't count towards those minutes. Those were good days, right? Those were just amazing. If that was the case, the IRS used to have you prorate how much was used for business, how much was used for personal. I don't know, if maybe someone here can contradict this, but almost everyone's cell phone plan should be unlimited now. If you're not unlimited, then maybe.
Talk to your.
Yeah, I'll talk to you, geez, someone will talk to you. But yeah, now it's pretty much everything's unlimited, so the IRS is very much lightened up on the whole, can you deduct it or not? So my rule of thumb, back to necessary ordinary, you have to be able, as a realtor, you don't, again, it's not a conversation, but you have to have a phone, you have to have internet to be able to make money. So in my opinion, most of you, if not all of you, should be writing off your full cell phone bill, your full internet bill. If you're not, talk to your repair, figure out why you're not able to. Again, there might be certain situations where you're not be able to, but you have to have the internet. You have to have that cell phone bill. How do you break up how unlimited works? So most of the recent court cases have ruled in favor of the taxpayer because they said you bought it for the business, you might have got a little bit of small fringe benefits using it on the personal side, but it was a required business. Yeah, cell phone's a good one. Other ones?
What about the car,
Oh yeah,
gas versus
mileage.
mileage?
Who takes, right, raise your hand, who takes mileage, who takes gas, and who takes both? They don't know what they're doing. Both, both take mileage. Yeah, most realtors will take mileage. So the rule with the vehicle is it's per life of the vehicle, so you can't alternate. It's a very misconception, right? One year I drove a lot, so I'm gonna take mileage. Next year I'm gonna take gas, can't do that. Where as long as you own the same vehicle, it has to have the same choice. You have to stick with mileage until you get a new vehicle, stick with gas, till you.
So if you had a sign on the side of the car that you could use, could you deduct your payments?
Absolutely. And so even without you don't have to have your logo on the side to be able to deduct it.
Okay.
Not at all.
You have to be able to just like.
You have to prove that that was used for business.
Okay.
So let's take a great example. My wife's name's Holly. Holly and I, let's say we have 2 cars. And I drive a truck, because I like trucks, my wife, I don't know which, guys like some GMC. She drives and I take my truck, I take it as a business expense on one of my LLCs. I then take hers on another LLC as a write-off. If I get audited, every time the IRS is gonna say, well, where's your personal vehicle? How did you get groceries? How did you pick your kids from school? How did you go to the park, right? So that is very important when you guys are deciding which vehicle to deduct, which ones not to, or which ones can you. You gotta make sure you have a line of defense there to say, which I do. I have a beater vehicle on the side I use to go pick up groceries, pick up things like that. That makes sense? So, okay.
Sorry.
No, go for it.
What's the 6,000 pound rule?
That's what I was
Whatever.
Yeah. Anyone know that? That's a sort of phone. Ever heard that 600 pounds? What you said? That's it.
That's why I bought a G-Wagon. I'm hoping you can
Hey,
say.
G-Wagon. I love that. A G-Wagon, I had a client buy 12 Model X's on December 30th to have a ride. The Model X is the only Tesla above 600 pounds. All Y's are. There's a whole conspiracy there. You can look at most of your vehicles. There's a lot that are 5,999.
But then
So
if you
explain
add in,
that to me.
because you add in some, like, no.
No, we can't be like, oh, it's a banana deal. Yeah, no. It's because what it is based on GVWR, gross vehicle weight rating. It's not curb weight. A lot of people get that wrong. It's not curb weight. Most vehicles, like my truck's not curb weight, 6,000 pounds. It's gross vehicle weight rating. So if your gross vehicle weight rating is 6,000 pounds or above, you can then accelerate the entire purchase price of the vehicle. So that's with a 6,000 pound. That's why most people are trying to tax plan will buy the Model X's or the Porsche Macan or all these other vehicles. G-Wagon is a great example. Trucks, SUVs. So the rule is if it's 6,000 pounds or higher, regardless of what your financing was, doesn't matter if you put 0 down or you paid cash for it, you can take the full write-off of the vehicle, full purchase price.
Why is that?
How long do we have?
Okay, never mind.
No, you're good. Again, back to the experience. Exactly. What the purpose behind it originally was, it's people forget, there's like 2 parts of the rule. There's a 6,000 pound rule or a 5.5 foot bed length. So like, the Sprint Tech vans, those qualify too, they have enough utility space in the back seats. The concept behind it is it was meant to be this is meant to be a work vehicle. Who's gonna buy a G-Wagon if they don't really need it? Well, then all of a sudden now everyone buys them. So the rules are kind of archaic. That's the reason why it was meant to be like, I have a work truck with a flatbed in the back. That's the 6,000 pound rule. It's changed though. It changed a lot with bonus depreciation. Who knows about bonus depreciation? Have you ever heard that term? The love or hate Trump, I'm not political, it's not endorsing all, but Trump changed the code back in 2018. One of the things he changed, the added on was called bonus depreciation. So bonus depreciation, it states that you put any type of asset, certain types of assets into your business, you can accelerate all of it. So it kind of replaced that one section. It's still included with that 6,000 pounds, but it's just changed the rule a little bit. So that rule has now been going away. That was 100% bonus depreciation as of last year in 2022. Now it's 80%. Next year 60, 40, 20, all the way to 2027 will be gone. Then we have to go back to using section 179, which is a little more semantics, but long and short of it is, if you're buying a vehicle and you want to write it off, it needs to be about that 6,000 pounds. If it's under that 6,000 pounds, you can only accelerate about changes by inflation, but about 20,000. And you can do that first 20,000 first year, then you'll take the remaining amount over the next 4 years. Now, this is irrelevant if we're taking mileage, right? If we're taking mileage, the vehicle can weigh a pound and weigh 1,000,000 pounds. It doesn't matter. Mileage is mileage. There's no difference. Does that make sense on the vehicle? So again, back to the whole thing on the side, you don't have to have it on the side. Does it help? Yeah, absolutely. If I have my name, my business right on the side, absolutely helps. You're gonna make the argument that, okay, I'm always advertising, people see my vehicle around town, absolutely. But it's by far not a requirement. Question on vehicle, that makes sense?
Once you go one route, you can't go back to the right, so if you depreciate, you go off the value, you can't claim any of the mileage.
Yep. Yeah, so if you go to do some tax planning, you call your preparing, you go, just go buy another G-Wagon, fire, you find someone else. If you buy that G-Wagon, let's just say it's 160K, you write out that full 160K, what's your deduction next year from that vehicle? Zero.
Yeah.
gas.
No, so you still take gas, so but you can't, not mileage. But you can't take your payments on the vehicle, it's already been accelerated, right? You've already taken all of that value. So you still take a gas, oil change, repair, car wash, things like that. But you rob Peter to pay Paul. You borrow from your future and you pay today. So unless you plan on buying a G-Wagon every single year, I would argue that's, in my opinion, it's not a great tax planning tool.
What if you did switch vehicles a lot? If, I mean, if you just happen to, a
Yeah,
new vehicle
yeah.
happen to fall in your taxes every year or so.
Which is extremely common, right? It's extremely common. I'm trying to figure out how, I don't do your guys' taxes, so this can be very surface level, so please don't sue me over what I'm gonna say. You can make an argument that you are converting that business use vehicle to a personal use vehicle. Then what you do personally with it is up to you. So here's a maneuver, you can do that. Back to the whole, like, if me and my wife only own 2 vehicles, that's gonna come into play. Right, every year you have a G-Wagon, right? Boom, boom, boom. 3 years you get audited. The IRS is gonna expect you to where the last 3 G-Wagons you bought. If you can't show them, you technically need to do a depreciation recapture on that vehicle and pay that back. Now, again, if you find money in Walmart's parking lot, you're supposed to report that in taxes. You guys know that? Found a $20 bill, and I know all of you guys do that because you're great Americans. You guys are legally required to do it. Same thing if I go sell my vehicle, that's been a business vehicle, and I sell it for $5,000, even though it was 100 grand, I have to pay that back, because my basis is the vehicle is not zero, because I accelerated it. I just made $5,000 in the eyes of that grass. I don't know anyone who does that, but theoretically you're supposed to. So if you're doing that and you're buying vehicles every year, talk to repair, create a better structure so every return doesn't have every set of returns have a G-Wagon. Don't put all your G-Wagons on one
If you
return.
do them all out of Montana, there were no taxes on.
Bingo.
Right?
Oh yeah, that client I had that bought those 12 Teslas, he bought all of them on like this, I lived at 7/30th, got delivered, he didn't drive any of them. And then he waited the next year and sold, and actually made some pretty good money on selling them, but. So yeah, you can, and again, we could, have a conversation, you can start up a leasing company. Right, one of the advantages of creating this structure here with the holding company and the S corp, you create a leasing company, you can lease your vehicles from your holding company to your S corp to use. Now you've got to do a write-off, right? Me as the owner of the vehicle, I can write off the purchase price of the vehicle, so I bought it. My S corp now has a leased vehicle, he's gonna deduct mileage. Same vehicle, but because I created this transaction between my LLCs, I can have 2 write-offs in the vehicle.
So with that, like, those starts like.
Sure, yeah, sure, okay.
For your, would you just set up another LLC?
Exactly. Yep. And again, back to like the aggressive versus conservative, if you're doing any of these things, I fully endorse moving it off of your personal return, right? Do a partnership. I don't do an S corp with assets. S corps aren't good for owning real estate, owning vehicles. Set up an LLC partnership with a spouse, significant other, or partner. And then yeah, absolutely buy as many vehicles as you want, or a little bit of Turo income, absolutely. Turo's kind of died down. It used to be great for my clients, but it's like that.
What happens if you have the car for business for 5 years and then you buy another car for business and you don't sell it?
If you don't sell it, yeah, great. So at 5 years, in theory, you've used.
Fully depreciated.
Yeah, it's fully depreciated, so your basis is now 0. Basis means the value in the eyes of the IRS, value of that vehicle is 0. Back to the conversation, Travis, right? Back to the conversation Travis and I was having, you could say that that's now been deemed as a personal vehicle. And because it's worth 0, there's no transaction. Right. Then you transfer it off when we do it on. Absolutely, that's great.
So it seems like there's a bunch of opportunities to get tax deductions. And if I were to set up a tax planning session with you, I feel like there's still more stuff that I wouldn't know to ask. So
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
the tax planning session, is it gonna be a situation, I've had this with other CPAs prior, because they didn't provide the information that I could have, would have been very helpful. And so I had to go to someone else who was a little more forthcoming with the tricks that they knew.
So it's a great word. It's a great. I use it all the time. It's like, I want to feel cooler to my wife. I'm like, it's full of tricks. She laughs and.
With their wisdom.
With their wisdom. Wow. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a consultant. So I travel, I teach, I offer like consulting packages to clients. This is by no means an endorsement at all. I will review anyone's taxes for free just to help out. If anyone wants to send me your taxes, I'll do like a 3-year look back, look at your taxes, give advice, and then please take that advice to your preparer.
And he's
I don't-
really good, just saying.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, absolutely. And then to me, that's the point, right? CPAs, for whatever reason, it's sticky. It's hard to leave an account. They know your socials, they know your situation, they just know it's just hard to leave. So by no means am I ever suggesting you leave, but make your repair better, right? Use me, use TikTok, use whatever, learn more information, then take it to your repair and go, hey, why don't you suggest buying a G-Wagon? Why don't you suggest buying a holding company? And they may have good reasons. They might go, hey, you don't need it because your income levels, or hey, we got these other structures, but you can't put all of the burden on the repair, because the repair only knows what he knows. And I will premise that most, especially Utah, I give a bad rap, but most Utah repairs aren't great. That's just the fact of the reality. Most of us, most repairs in Utah are based on the 1980s tax code, and it's in favor of the IRS. So I guarantee you, if you guys have a single member LLC, you go talk to your repairer, you say, I should be an S corp, they'll tell you no. And their dollar per hour is a lot less on an S corp than their personal. So they make less, so why would they recommend? So again, not to put all the recommendations, like put all the burden on your repair, but I do think you need to come with a little bit of preparation. But yeah, I think Sean's right. If you go to repair and go, hey, what should I do to plan? They go, well, I think you should probably buy another vehicle. I would recommend finding that. Find someone else, look elsewhere, because there's way better tax plan than buying vehicles. Vehicles are not a great asset.
Where are you based out of?
I'm, yeah.
Where do you want to say you're based out
A
of?
good question. I'm actually based out of Utah County. We actually just moved like 5 minutes out. I live in technically Kaysville. We just moved like 2 days ago. So, yeah, so we up here.
Oh, two.
Two here, yeah, so I'm up here now. I'm mostly virtual because my travel, I do have an office, I don't meet in it very often. So if you're like, hey, I just gotta look at that guy in the face, because he just looks so amazing, I probably won't be the best fit. I do most, remote. So for that, right, but I'll go back to the point of like asking your repair, just do some due diligence. I think it's important to check, make sure just do a gut check, and it might find out that your repair is amazing, which is, I think, is valuable.
So maybe we walk in and I sit down and he says, yeah, you pay about this much, it averages out, you wanna pay about this much, these write-offs, thumbs up, I'm good. If that's a good preparer to me, I mean, I was good with how much I paid, he did his job,
Absolutely,
he's keeping me and him out of jail, right?
you would think, yeah, you would think.
He's not shady.
Great. Yeah, I mean,
Isn't there 2,000 pages though on how to not pay taxes, and 200 on how to pay taxes?
I'd say less than that, yeah.
Did they teach you how to not pay taxes for?
Yeah, so-
They try.
Absolutely, right, so, and what I teach most of my seminars, like, for most of my 1% clients, right, 1% of wealth in America, don't pay a dime of tax. None of them, none of my clients pay tax. Oh, none of my 1% clients pay tax, let's put it that way.
Go figure.
Crazy, right? Yeah. So when we get to talk about income disparity, we talk about all these great topics here, but a good preparer to some people might be ease. Come in and give them their stuff, I'm out in half an hour, I get my vouchers, I leave and pay. That's great. That might be of value to higher than value to someone else. And that's important because that's why there's so many repairers, is because people tailor different things, right? I don't, and I think, in my opinion, if you're a good preparer, it's not like that. Right, it's give me information, let me go through a review, let's have another conversation, hey, I recommend we do this, this, and this. And I cannot do good tax planning April 15th, I can't. If I've got clients that talk to me once a year, I will fire them, so I can't help them. Because guess what, they owe a ton of tax, guess who they blame? Now, I look bad when I don't need help looking bad, so I just need clients that communicate. So the communication, if you're not communicating with your repairer, I would love to say, oh, that repair's worse. But it does come a little on yourselves. You gotta be able to communicate, or they don't know what they're doing. That means they have to have enough information to be able to work with. Other questions on that? I have a few more minutes. Other questions on that?
So just curious, if you do have a paid off car, would you recommend that your client buys a new car that's paid off? Because then if there's zero.
Yeah, I mean,
Kaylee, you don't
Or
need to
does it
buy another
depend?
vehicle.
No, I'm curious.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, should you paying off the vehicle?
Another vehicle.
Need to books irrelevant.
Oh, you have a few in your driveway.
Time for the J1.
Moving on.
So paying off the vehicle, and remind me your name, Sean. It is relatively irrelevant because the paying off the vehicle, right? Loans to and from are not taxed. So you having a vehicle payment doesn't matter to me. And this is kind of where I was conversation steered to a good conversation. But what I try to help my clients understand is to create wealth, right? Wealth through tax planning, wealth through structure, but also creating assets that can create money. There is Turo, but your vehicles, and this is kind of odd to say now because vehicles I swear have gone up like in crazy pricing, but vehicles are a depreciating asset. Right? Why is Warren Buffett drive the same Mercedes he's had for 60 years, right? Because it doesn't make him money. So what I try to help my clients understand is by, rather than spending another $1,000 a month, while that may be an immediate tax deduction, why don't we go buy a rental property? Why don't we do cost seg that property, accelerate all that depreciation, now we can pay no taxes, next year we do the same thing. Now we have, hopefully in 5-10 years, we have, let's just say 10 to 20 properties, you can retire on 10 to 20 properties. And that income is not going to be taxed because we're going to be almost always, because of our interest in property tax, will be under the threshold. So now we're building equity, we're having cash flowing assets, and we're banking on appreciation. That to me is the key to most millionaires, right? 90% of all millionaires come from real estate. If you look at your situation right now and you got this little fluff of cash sitting around and you're buying more vehicles because your parent told you to save on tax, I think that's a situation where you fire the guy. I think it's good to buy something that is going to be able to create immediate write-offs for you, but also have long-term effects rather than vehicle. Questions, other question on that?
About paying your kids.
Ooh, good question. Yeah, tap that. We're still going to pay that. Paying kids is the one I hear all the time. Again, it's that one and another one called Augusta rule. Never heard that term. I hate that term. I like the master permit. That's where they got the nickname Augusta. Paying your kids. I'll talk about those two real quick. How much can you pay your kids per year? Anyone know?
12,600.
$1 billion. You can pay your kids as much as you want. So why does that 12,000 number always come out?
That's great.
What's it?
That's how much you can do that.
You can deduct $1 billion. I can pay my kids $1 billion and I can deduct $1 billion. They're not worth it. One of my dollars. Oh, yeah, exactly. Speak up, say it again.
Kids don't have.
If I pay my kids $1 billion, there's a thing called a kitty tax. They're gonna start paying a kitty tax, they file tax return, can't get in FAFSA with, or any scholarships on $1 billion W-2. So that number, that 12,000 number that comes out is because of the standard deduction. Standard deduction this year, if I remember right, it's like 13,580. If the kids make under that, and all their income from you, from their side jobs, if they make under 13,580, they have no legal requirement to file tax. So that's where that number, it used to be 12,000 roughly. That's where that number has come from, where you want to pay that amount so that your kids don't have to file a tax return and pay tax. I don't want to shift my burden on my kids. How you do it, the correct way is through an LLC family partnership or a single member LLC. You do not pay them through an S corp or a C corp. So that this holding company, if you're sitting there going, I got a spouse, I've got 100 kids. This is a great opportunity to get a right. You can create an LLC family partnership. It needs to have a business purpose. Let's just say buying vehicles, doing Turo, and your kids help vacuum out and clean all those cars. I can pay each of them, let's just say 13,000 for simplicity. They have no legal requirement to file a tax return, and because I did it through a partnership, I don't have to pay FICA tax. So it technically needs to be done through a W-2. It's not 1099. Everyone thinks it's 1099. You need to hire a payroll company, myself, Gusto, ADP, pay to anyone. Needs to file a W-2 for the child. And now there's no FICA tax taken out. It can go in their account. Now again, this is where I was going to go with the conversation, which is creating generational wealth. That's now active income. So each of your children can now open up a Roth IRA. You can put $6,000 in their Roth. You do that from the age of 1 to 18. In theory, when they retire, there'll be $1 million in that account.
Are you paying taxes on the money now or no?
On the Roth. So Roth is post-tax. So no, the tax has already been paid. So there won't be taxes taken out when they retire.
Yeah.
So in theory, I'm giving you $1 million tax-free for each one of your kids.
But you're not paying tax on it, because if I'm giving it to my 12-year-old and it's under the limit.
Then no one's paying tax, and now they get tax-free growth forever. It's an extremely good loophole.
It's W-2, not 1099.
Not tonight. Be 1099, 12 grand, they'll owe 17,000, or sorry, 1,700 in tax. 17 grand would be terrible. That'd be terrible. So any other questions on the kids?
Effectively, they have to perform legitimate work.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very good disclaimer. Yeah, they need to actually work. Now, what can that be? There's been a lot of court cases on this. The IRS will say it needs to be fair market value. And no offense to some of my clients get paid a whole lot more than they should. Same thing with my kids. If my kids sweep, I would love to be in that audit. If they sweep my office and I pay them 12 grand, never had an auditor argue that and say that's not legitimate. Oh, I'd have a field day with that. How can they dictate the fair market value of what I just had to pay my children? So to make sure the argument's clear, it does need to be legitimate work. How much? You can create modeling contracts for your kids so they can model for your website, you can put their faces on your car. there's a lot of opportunities to get your kids legitimate work. I definitely recommend keeping a log of the work they perform, having hours logged, things like that, absolutely. Other question on the kid side? Now, I'll talk about the Augusta rule. Everyone heard about the 14-day rule? It's called, it's nicknamed the Augusta rule. I used to call it the 14-day rule. So the IRS, it happened really, really common back in 2002 when the Olympics came here. Everyone remembers those heyday, people were coming out of state and they were renting a room for thousands just to be close to Salt Lake. All of these people in Utah wrote private letter rulings to the IRS asking how they should handle it for taxes. Say, hey, I listed my basement for a week, pay 20 grand, what do I do? And all of them referred back to this code. So it's 208A is the section code. The IRS states if you rent your home for 14 days or less in a calendar year, it's not deemed a rental activity and you do not report income or the expenses associated with that property. So the benefit becomes an S corp. Another reason S corps are great. S corps, like I mentioned in the beginning, board of directors. One of the requirements of S corp, you have to have board meetings. Why not have a board meeting on your own personal residence and pay Craig to use his home? Like Craig, since 14 days or less, I don't have to report his income, but a business can take it as a deduction. So that's the Augusta rule. I would recommend talking to your repairer about it. I'd recommend taking advantage of it. Same disclaimer, needs to be fair market value. I can't pay myself 50 grand a night. Wish I could. That is no way anyone else would pay 50 grand for my house. You can't. Has to be within the limits.
And just because I remember this from somewhere,
Yeah.
is it 1250 that you can?
Yeah,
off
it's
per
15
month?
grand a year.
What was that?
Or only 15 grand a year.
For this deduction? No, it's fair market value. So there's no cap. So for example, Utah, for all my clients, I call, like most of where my clients are every year, I call different like Marriott centers, Ritz Carlton's, I ask what their like conference room would cost. That helps me advise my clients how much to take. Utah's not 1250. Utah is on average between 500 to $1,000 a night. So I recommend that a max of that be 14,000, I guess. But again, where you are, how aggressive conservative, I argue back to what's your structure look like, what's your income look like, how nice is your house? Does it have amenities? You offer any utilities, things like that might change the value. Any other questions that I can answer for you now? When can you come back? When can I come back? Wow, I taught.
Just like, do you want to be my partner? There is an opening on my LLC.
You got me, you got me. Yeah,
There's a lot of truth to that. It's fine.
okay, this is not endorsement, I don't, this is not super rude. I'm not needing clients, I teach because I think people are overpaying a lot in taxes. So really utilize this opportunity to go back to your repair, talk to them, see what can be done. Obviously, if questions, feel free to reach out to me. But again, this is meant for you guys to learn about your taxes, understand that taxes, although they suck, if we can save in this conversation, paying your children, running off your home, as well as setting up an S corp, you guys should be able to save 30 to 40 grand a year on taxes. Pretty easily. What's it?
How do we reach you?
I'll write it up here. The name of my business is Desert Rose Tax. You can reach me at Craig. I got business cards up here too.
Oh,
Desert Rose. My grandfather owned all the roses, the rose greenhouses in called Desert Rose. That's where the name comes from. So Craig at desertrosetax.com. And my phone number is, don't want to come up and scared talking to me. Take this down, 8933.
New cards are where?
In my pen in your pocket.
Awesome.
Thank you for being also very entertaining, because I think sometimes when people hear tax planning structure, they think they're gonna just take a little skip through. So thank you, because that was awesome information and also very entertaining.
Good.
Thank you. Okay.